My wife filed a restraining order, claiming I was emotionally abusive for questioning her spending time with her ex-lover. I didn't fight it, just closed all the accounts and canceled the business loan I was financing. Her lawyer called 72 hours later, pleading to negotiate. You know what they say about Thursdays? They're like the awkward middle child of weekdays. Not quite hump day, not quite Friday freedom, just there. I was sitting in my corner office, pretending to care about quarterly reports while actually planning my weekend golf game, when my receptionist's voice came through the intercom, sounding like she'd just witnessed a murder. "Adrian, someone's here for you," Melissa squeaked, and I swear I could hear her hands trembling through the speaker system. In 3 years of working for me, the woman had handled angry clients, hostile takeover negotiations, and that one time when my ex-business partner showed up drunk at 9 a.m. demanding his fair share of a company he'd abandoned. But this had her spooked. I figured it was probably another client with their panties in a twist about contract terms. Maybe the Henderson account finally grew a backbone and decided to negotiate instead of just signing whatever I put in front of them. Hell, maybe it was even good news, a referral, a new deal, someone actually wanting to throw money at me for once instead of the other way around. So I strolled down to the lobby with all the confidence of a man who had absolutely no clue his world was about to get flipped upside down like a pancake at IHOP. I was even humming a little tune, something obnoxious from the 80s that had been stuck in my head since my morning commute. Life was good. Business was solid. My biggest worry was whether to get Thai food or pizza for lunch. The guy waiting for me looked exactly like what Central Casting would order if they needed a process server. Cheap suit, nervous energy, and the kind of mustache that screamed, "I peaked in community college." He was shifting his weight from foot to foot like he needed to use the bathroom, clutching a manila envelope like it contained nuclear launch codes. "Adrian Blackwell?" he asked, though we both knew damn well who I was. My name's literally etched in glass on the door behind him. "That's me," I said, extending my hand for what I assumed would be a normal human interaction. Maybe he was delivering a contract or court documents for one of my cases. Or, instead of shaking my hand, this joker shoved the envelope into my chest like he was trying to jumpstart my heart. "You've been served," he announced with all the dramatic flair of a dinner theater actor, then practically sprinted out of there like his ass was on fire. I stood there for a solid 10 seconds, holding this envelope and feeling like I'd just been pranked by the universe. Melissa was staring at me from behind her desk with the kind of wide-eyed expression usually reserved for natural disasters and celebrity meltdowns. A couple of clients in the waiting area were pretending not to watch while absolutely watching every second of this train wreck. "Well," I said to nobody in particular, "this should be interesting." I tore open the envelope right there in the lobby because, honestly, what's the point in dragging out the suspense? The first thing that hit me was the official letterhead, Superior Court of California. The second thing was my wife's name, Serena Blackwell, listed as the petitioner. And the third thing, the real kicker, were the words, "Temporary Restraining Order," stamped across the top in letters so bold they might as well have been screaming. I'm not gonna lie, for about 30 seconds, I just stood there like a deer caught in headlights, reading and rereading those words because my brain refused to process them. A restraining order. Against me. Filed by my own wife. The woman who'd been sharing my bed, my bank account, and my Netflix password for the past 4 years. The accusations read like a greatest hits album of toxic relationship cliches. Emotional abuse. Controlling behavior. Creating a hostile environment. According to this document, I was apparently some kind of monster who had terrorized my poor, innocent wife with my unreasonable demands and manipulative tactics. And what exactly had I done to earn this prestigious title? What heinous crime had I committed that warranted legal intervention? I had asked her why she was spending so much time with Victor. Victor, her ex-boyfriend. The same Victor who'd been sliding into her DMs like a greased seal for the past 6 months. The same Victor who'd been inviting her to catch up over coffee and discuss old times with the subtlety of a freight train. The same Victor who apparently needed my wife's undivided attention to help him through his difficult divorce. So yeah, I'd ask questions. Sue me. Oh wait, she literally just did. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife and serve it at a dinner party. Here I was, reading about how controlling and financially abusive I allegedly was, while sitting in an office that I'd built from scratch, wearing a suit that I'd paid for, holding papers that detailed how dangerous I was to the woman whose entire lifestyle I'd been bankrolling for years. Let's talk about that lifestyle for a hot minute. Serena's boutique? The one she called her passion project and her creative outlet, funded entirely by yours truly. The business loan that kept her little fashion empire afloat, guaranteed by me. The joint credit cards she used for business expenses that somehow always seemed to involve designer handbags and spa days. All in my name, naturally. I'd covered everything. Her car payment, her health insurance, her gym membership, her monthly trips to that overpriced salon where they charge $50 to make her hair look exactly the same as when she walked in. Hell, I'd even paid for the lawyer who helped her set up the business structure for her boutique, never imagining that same legal framework would eventually be used to freeze me out. But apparently, asking, "Hey honey, why are you texting your ex at midnight?" made me the villain in this story. Apparently, expressing concern about her suddenly jam-packed social calendar with Mr. Tall, Dark, and recently single made me controlling. Apparently, wanting to know why our joint account was hemorrhaging money faster than a Vegas gambler on a losing streak made me financially abusive. The more I read, the more I had to admire the sheer audacity of it all. According to this document, I was a manipulative puppet master who used money as a weapon to control my wife's every move. Never mind that she'd never held a job that paid more than minimum wage before I came along. Never mind that her business would have folded faster than Superman on laundry day without my financial backing. Never mind that I'd never once, not once, told her she couldn't buy something or go somewhere or see someone. I just asked questions. Reasonable questions. The kind of questions any rational person might ask when their spouse suddenly develops a social life that doesn't include them. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy who made it all possible. Standing there in that lobby, surrounded by the quiet murmur of office life continuing around me, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not rage, not heartbreak, not even disappointment. Really, what I felt was clarity, like someone had just handed me a roadmap to my own freedom and highlighted all the best routes. Because here's the thing that Serena clearly hadn't thought through when she was plotting this little legal maneuver. A restraining order works both ways. If she wanted me to stay away from her, if she wanted zero contact, if she wanted to paint me as this dangerous, controlling monster who couldn't be trusted around her, well, then that's exactly what she was going to get. I folded those papers with the care of a man handling fine china, tucked them into my jacket pocket, and walked back upstairs to my office. Melissa watched me go with the kind of concerned expression usually reserved for people walking toward the gallows, but I just gave her a little wave and a smile that probably looked more unsettling than reassuring. Back in my office, I closed the door, sat down at my desk, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to fight this. I wasn't going to call my lawyer and demand we contest it. I wasn't going to try to convince anyone that I was innocent of these ridiculous charges. Instead, I was going to comply. Enthusiastically, completely, without question or complaint. If Serena wanted a restraining order to protect her from her allegedly abusive husband, then by God, she was going to get the most thorough protection anyone had ever received. I was going to follow every single letter of that court order like it was handed down from Moses himself. And if that compliance happened to have some unintended consequences for the woman who'd just tried to torpedo my reputation and destroy my life, well, that was just the price of safety, wasn't it? After all, I was just trying to be a good, law-abiding citizen. What could possibly go wrong with that? That evening, I did what any rational, law-abiding citizen would do after being served with a restraining order. I poured myself 3 fingers of Macallan 18 and fired up my laptop. Nothing says therapeutic evening like good scotch and online banking, am I right? The restraining order was still sitting on my kitchen counter, looking all official and intimidating with its court seals and legal jargon. But you know what? I'd read that sucker cover to cover about 15 times by now, and I had to hand it to Serena's lawyer. Whoever he was, he'd done his homework. The document was thorough, detailed, and absolutely crystal clear about one thing. I was to have zero contact with my wife. None. Nada. Zilch. No phone calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at her work, no accidental encounters at Starbucks. I couldn't communicate with her directly or indirectly. I couldn't ask friends to pass along messages. I couldn't even send her a Christmas card if I wanted to. For all legal intents and purposes, Serena Blackwell might as well have been a stranger living on Mars. And you know what the beautiful thing about restraining orders is? They're designed to protect people from unwanted contact and interference. The court system takes that shit seriously. So if I were to continue having any kind of involvement in Serena's life, financial or otherwise, well, that might be construed as a violation. And we absolutely couldn't have that, could we? I mean, what kind of monster would I be if I kept trying to control my wife's life after she'd specifically asked the court to protect her from me? So I started clicking. Click, click, click. Like a man on a mission to clean up his digital life. First stop, our joint credit cards. You know, the ones that Serena had been using to fund her little shopping expeditions and business expenses. The ones where I was the primary cardholder and she was just an authorized user. The ones that were technically mine but had somehow become her personal ATM over the years. Chase Bank was surprisingly accommodating when I called their customer service line. Mr. Blackwell, you'd like to remove an authorized user from your account? Of course, sir. May I ask the reason? Legal separation, I said, which was technically true. A restraining order is definitely a form of legal separation. I need to protect both parties from any potential complications. The customer service rep, her name was Jennifer, and she sounded like she was probably from Ohio, was all professional sympathy. I completely understand, sir. We see this fairly often. I'll remove Mrs. Blackwell from all your accounts immediately. She'll receive notification that her cards have been deactivated, and you'll get new cards with different numbers within 5 to 7 business days. 3 minutes. That's all it took to cut off Serena's access to about 60 grand in available credit. 3 minutes and a few clicks, and suddenly her financial safety net had a great big hole in it. But wait, there's more. Next up were the automatic transfers I'd set up to keep her boutique afloat. Every month, like clockwork, $3,000 would magically appear in her business account. Not a loan, not a payment for services rendered, just straight-up free money because I was a supportive husband who believed in his wife's dreams. Wells Fargo's online banking system made it stupidly easy to cancel recurring transfers. A few clicks, a confirmation code sent to my phone, and boom, no more monthly allowance for Serena's boutique. The next transfer was scheduled for the 15th, but surprise, it wasn't going to happen. Ever again. I'll admit, there was something oddly satisfying about watching those automatic payments disappear from my scheduled transactions. It was like deleting a computer virus or finally throwing away that broken lamp you've been meaning to fix for 3 years. Cleansing, liberating, therapeutic as hell. But the real masterpiece, the piece de resistance of my evening's work, was dealing with the business loan. See, when Serena first opened her boutique, she'd gone to the bank full of dreams and ambition and absolutely zero credit history that would qualify her for a business loan. The bank had taken one look at her application and laughed her right out of the building. Enter yours truly, the supportive husband with excellent credit and a steady income. I'd co-signed that loan, guaranteed it with my own assets, basically told the bank, don't worry, if she can't pay, I will. It was a $40,000 loan at a decent interest rate. And without my signature on those papers, Serena's little fashion empire never would have gotten off the ground. Now, here's where things get interesting from a legal perspective. As a guarantor on that loan, I had certain rights. One of those rights was the ability to withdraw my guarantee under specific circumstances. And wouldn't you know it, being served with a restraining order that accused me of financial abuse seemed like a pretty compelling circumstance. I called my banker, Mr. Collins, at home. Yeah, I know. Calling your banker at 8:30 on a Thursday night probably sounds excessive, but when you've got as much money in his bank as I do, you get to have his personal cell number. That's just one of the perks of being a valued customer. Adrian, he answered, sounding genuinely pleased to hear from me. How's business? How's Serena? I haven't seen you two at the client appreciation dinner in a while. Actually, that's why I'm calling, I said, settling back in my leather chair with my scotch. Serena and I are having some legal issues. She's filed a restraining order against me, claiming I'm financially abusive. Obviously, I need to protect myself and the bank from any potential liability. There was a pause, a long pause, the kind of pause that tells you someone's brain is working overtime to process unexpected information. Oh, Collins finally said. Oh my, I'm sorry to hear that, Adrian. That must be incredibly difficult for you. It is what it is, I replied, going for the world-weary but professional tone. Look, I need to withdraw my guarantee on her business loan. I can't risk being accused of continued financial involvement after she specifically told the court that my financial support is abusive. Another pause. Shorter this time. I understand completely. From a liability standpoint, that makes perfect sense. When would you like this to take effect? Immediately. Tonight, if possible. Consider it done. I'll have the paperwork prepared first thing in the morning. But Adrian, you understand what this means for the loan, right? Oh, I understood perfectly. Without my guarantee, Serena's loan would be in default faster than you could say insufficient collateral. The bank would demand immediate repayment or alternative guarantee within 30 days. And since Serena's boutique was barely breaking even on a good month, the chances of her finding another guarantor were somewhere between slim and non-existent. I understand, I said, but my hands are tied here. She's made it clear that my financial involvement in her life is unwanted and abusive. I have to respect that. Of course. I'll take care of everything. And Adrian, if there's anything else we can do to help you through this difficult time. Thanks, Collins. I appreciate it. After I hung up, I sat there for a few minutes, swirling the scotch in my glass and contemplating the elegant simplicity of it all. Serena had wanted to paint me as a controlling financial abuser, so I was giving her exactly what she'd asked for: complete financial independence. No more joint credit cards to abuse her with. No more automatic transfers to control her business. No more loan guarantees to manipulate her with. She was finally, truly free from my toxic financial influence. Free to succeed or fail entirely on her own merits. Free to build her business empire without the burden of my support. Free to live the independent life she'd apparently been craving all along. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about whether her boutique was making money. I didn't have to stress about surprise credit card bills or wonder where my money was going each month. I didn't have to lie awake at night calculating whether we could afford her latest business investment or marketing opportunity. The silence in my house was profound. No buzzing phone demanding immediate transfers for urgent business expenses. No panic calls about cash flow problems. No guilt trips about not being supportive enough of her entrepreneurial dreams. Just peace. Pure, blessed peace. I raised my glass to the empty room. Here's to freedom, I said aloud, and knocked back the rest of my scotch. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Saturday morning hit me like a warm hug from my grandmother. Peaceful, comfortable, and completely devoid of financial anxiety. I woke up naturally around 8:30. Which was a minor miracle considering I'd usually spend my weekends fielding frantic texts from Serena about urgent boutique emergencies that somehow always required immediate cash infusions. But this morning, blissful silence. No notifications lighting up my phone like a Christmas tree. No desperate voicemails about suppliers demanding payment or rent being due or some critical piece of equipment mysteriously breaking down right when she needed it most. Just me, my coffee maker, and the kind of Saturday morning that God intended for civilized human beings. I was sitting on my back deck, drinking what had to be the best cup of coffee I'd had in months, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I'd let that shit go straight to voicemail. 9 times out of 10, it's either a telemarketer trying to extend my car warranty or some political campaign begging for money. But something about the timing felt significant, so I picked up. Adrian Blackwell. I answered, using my professional voice because you never know who might be calling. Mr. Blackwell, good morning. This is Martin Rhodes, attorney at law. I represent your wife, Serena Blackwell. Well. The plot thickens. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly very interested in where this conversation was heading. In my experience, when lawyers call you on Saturday morning, it's either very good news or very bad news. And considering the events of the past 48 hours, I had a pretty good idea which category this fell into. Mr. Rhodes, I said, injecting just the right amount of polite confusion into my voice. I wasn't expecting to hear from anyone this morning. How can I help you? There was a pause on the other end, the kind of pause that tells you someone's trying to figure out how to deliver bad news without sounding like they're delivering bad news. Rhodes cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice had that carefully measured tone that lawyers use when they're tap dancing around a landmine. Mr. Blackwell, there appears to have been some sort of misunderstanding regarding certain financial arrangements. I almost choked on my coffee. Misunderstanding? That was rich. I'm sorry, Mr. Rhodes, but I'm not sure what you're referring to. Could you be more specific? Another pause. Longer this time. I could practically hear the guy's brain working overtime, trying to figure out how to spin this conversation in his client's favor. Well, it seems that certain accounts have been altered. Joint credit cards have been closed, automatic transfers have been canceled, and there are questions about a business loan guarantee. I said, nodding even though he couldn't see me. Yes, I can explain that. You see, your client filed a restraining order against me, alleging that I'm financially abusive and controlling. Obviously, I can't risk continued involvement in her financial affairs after such serious accusations. I'm simply complying with the spirit of the court order by removing myself from any situation where I might be accused of further abuse. The silence on the other end was so profound, I actually checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. When Rhodes finally spoke, his voice had lost some of that professional composure. Mr. Blackwell, surely you understand that the restraining order doesn't require you to completely withdraw financial support. I almost laughed out loud. Almost. But instead, I went for confused concern. Mr. Rhodes, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that continuing to provide financial support to someone who's told the court I'm abusing them with money would be problematic. I mean, how would that look? Your Honor, I know my client claims he's financially abusive, but she still wants him to pay her bills? That doesn't seem like a winning argument. I could hear papers rustling in the background. Rhodes was clearly scrambling, probably looking through the restraining order, trying to find some loophole that would force me to keep bankrolling his client's lifestyle. The order specifically prohibits contact and harassment, he said finally. It doesn't address ongoing financial obligations between spouses. You're absolutely right, I agreed cheerfully. It doesn't address them, which is exactly why I'm being so careful to avoid any situation that might be construed as using money to control or manipulate your client. I'm sure you understand my position here, Mr. Rhodes. I've been accused of some pretty serious stuff. The last thing I want is to give your client more ammunition for her case by continuing behaviors she's characterized as abusive. The conversation was getting more entertaining by the minute. I could practically feel Rhodes's frustration through the phone line. Here was a guy who'd probably taken this case thinking it would be a slam dunk. Scorned wife gets restraining order. Husband gets forced to pay through the nose while fighting the charges. Everyone goes home happy except for the poor bastard footing the bills. Except his client had apparently forgotten to mention one tiny detail. Her entire world ran on her husband's credit and goodwill. Without me propping up her house of cards, the whole thing was about to come tumbling down faster than a Jenga tower in an earthquake. Mr. Blackwell, Rhodes said, and now his voice had taken on a slightly pleading quality that he was trying very hard to disguise as professional concern. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss this situation. I'm sure we can find a reasonable solution that works for everyone. A meeting, I repeated, letting my voice rise slightly in what I hoped sounded like genuine alarm. Mr. Rhodes, your client has a restraining order against me. She's told the court that she's afraid of me, that I'm dangerous, that contact with me causes her emotional distress. How could I possibly agree to a meeting? That would be incredibly irresponsible of me. What if she claimed I was trying to intimidate her or coerce her into dropping the charges? We could arrange for a neutral location, with proper supervision. No, I interrupted, shaking my head vigorously even though he couldn't see me. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Rhodes, I really do. But I have to think about protecting both your client and myself here. The court order is very clear about maintaining distance. I won't risk violating it, not even in a supervised setting. That wouldn't be fair to anyone involved. The desperation in his voice was getting harder to hide. Surely there must be some way to address the immediate financial concerns while the legal proceedings are ongoing. The immediate financial concerns? I repeated thoughtfully. Well, I suppose your client could apply for emergency spousal support through the court. Or maybe she could contact her family for assistance. Or perhaps she could explore business loans based on her own credit and collateral. There are lots of options for someone who wants to maintain their independence. I was really enjoying this conversation now. It was like watching someone try to solve a puzzle when half the pieces were missing and the other half were on fire. Mr. Blackwell, I think you're being deliberately obtuse about this situation. Obtuse. I let hurt creep into my voice. Mr. Rhodes, I'm trying to be responsible here. Your client has made some very serious accusations against me. She's told the court that my involvement in her life is harmful and unwanted. I'm simply respecting her wishes and the legal process. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? There was another long pause, and when Rhodes spoke again, I could tell he was barely holding on to his professional demeanor. This is a very unusual interpretation of the court order. Maybe so, I conceded. But it's the safest interpretation. And given the circumstances, I think safety has to be my top priority, don't you? I mean, we're talking about serious accusations here. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, controlling behavior. These aren't parking tickets we're dealing with. I could hear Rhodes take a deep breath, probably counting to 10 in his head. Perhaps if we could arrange for communication through counsel. Mr. Rhodes, I interrupted gently. I'm going to stop you right there. I understand you're trying to help your client, and I respect that. But I've made my position clear. I will not risk violating the restraining order or exposing myself to additional accusations of abuse. If your client wants to discuss financial arrangements, she'll need to do it through the proper legal channels, with full court oversight and approval. And if she files for emergency spousal support, then the court will make a determination based on the facts and the law, I said reasonably. And I'm sure my attorney will present a thorough defense, including documentation of how my previous financial support was characterized as abuse by your client. The line went quiet for what felt like a full minute. When Rhodes spoke again, his voice was tight with barely controlled frustration. Mr. Blackwell, I don't think you fully understand the consequences of your actions. I smiled at that. Oh, I understand them perfectly, Mr. Rhodes. Your client wanted independence from my allegedly abusive financial control, and now she has it. Completely. Isn't that what she asked for? This conversation is over, he said curtly. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Rhodes. And please give your client my best wishes for her new, independent lifestyle. I hung up and immediately pulled out my laptop to document the call. Date, time, duration, summary of conversation, everything my own lawyer would need if this ended up being relevant later. Because if there's one thing I've learned in business, it's that you document everything, especially when dealing with people who might try to twist your words later. After I finished typing up my notes, I poured myself another cup of coffee and went back out to the deck. The morning was still beautiful, my stress levels were practically non-existent, and somewhere across town, a lawyer was probably having a very uncomfortable conversation with his client about the realities of financial independence. Life was good, really, really good. Monday morning rolled around with all the subtlety of a freight train carrying a cargo of drama and bullshit. I was barely through my first cup of coffee when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Not the usual work emails or client requests. No, this was social media warfare, and apparently, I was enemy number one. It started with a text from my buddy Mike. Dude, you might want to check Facebook. Serena's friend is going nuclear about you. Ah, Clarissa. I should have seen this coming. Clarissa Martinez, Serena's best friend since college, social media influencer wannabe, and professional shit-stirrer extraordinaire. If there was drama to be found within a 50-mile radius, Clarissa would not only find it, she'd amplify it, live stream it, and probably try to monetize it through her lifestyle brand. I pulled up Facebook on my phone, and there it was, a post that had already racked up 200 likes and was climbing faster than gas prices in a crisis. The headline was pure Clarissa. When financial abuse wears a three-piece suit, broken heart, money with wings. Oh, this was going to be good. Ladies, I need to talk to you about something serious. The post began because Clarissa always addressed her social media posts like she was hosting a talk show for suburban moms. My dear friend Serena is going through something that no woman should ever have to experience. Her husband, who I won't name, but some of you know, has shown his true colors in the most disgusting way possible. I had to admire her restraint in not naming me directly. Probably her lawyer told her to avoid anything that could be construed as defamation. Smart girl. This man, she continued, has been financially abusing my friend for years, controlling every penny, monitoring her spending, making her feel guilty for every dollar she spent on herself or her business. And now, just because she finally found the courage to stand up to him, he's punishing her by cutting off all financial support. I nearly snorted coffee through my nose. Controlling every penny? I'd literally been handing Serena blank checks for years. The woman had spent more on handbags in the past 6 months than most people spend on cars. But Clarissa was just getting warmed up. He pulled the loan on her business, y'all. Her business. The thing she's worked so hard to build. Her dream. Her independence. And he's destroying it out of pure spite. This is what financial abuse looks like. This is how toxic men operate. They seem supportive until you try to leave. Then they show you what they're really made of. The comments section was already a dumpster fire of supportive outrage. OMG, what a monster. Men like this should be in jail. Your friend deserves so much better. I hope she takes him for everything in the divorce. I screenshotted the whole thing, naturally. Then I kept scrolling. That's when I found the real gold mine. A comment thread where Clarissa was getting a little too chatty with her supporters. One of her followers had asked for more details, and Clarissa, apparently drunk on righteous indignation and social media attention, had spilled way more than she probably intended. Girl, it's even worse than that. Clarissa had replied to someone named Jennifer who had a profile picture of her holding a wine glass. Serena told me he pulled the loan guarantee the same day she got the restraining order. Like, literally the same day. She was just trying to protect herself from his emotional abuse, and he immediately retaliated by destroying her livelihood. Jennifer replied with a series of angry face emojis, but then another friend jumped in, someone named Ashley who apparently had some business sense. Wait, Ashley wrote. He was guaranteeing her business loan, and she filed a restraining order against him? Girl, that's actually pretty standard. My cousin went through something similar, and her lawyer told her to expect exactly that. You can't have someone guarantee your loan and then claim they're financially abusing you. That's like a conflict of interest or something. Oh, Ashley. Sweet, logical Ashley. I wanted to send her a fruit basket. But Clarissa wasn't having any of that reasonable analysis. It doesn't matter what's standard, she shot back. It's vindictive. He's using money as a weapon to hurt her for speaking out. That's literally the definition of financial abuse. And then, and this is where Clarissa's big mouth really got her in trouble, she posted a screenshot. A screenshot of a text conversation between her and Serena from the previous night. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., and Serena's message was a masterpiece of unintentional self-incrimination. Clarissa, I'm freaking out. He pulled the loan. Now I can't keep the shop open. The restraining order was supposed to make him behave, not give him an excuse to destroy everything. What am I going to do? Clarissa had replied with something supportive about how Serena was so brave and how karma would get him. But the damage was done. There it was, in black and white. Serena had expected the restraining order to control my behavior while leaving her financial benefits intact. I screenshotted that conversation faster than a paparazzi photographer at a celebrity meltdown. Then I sent it to my lawyer, Gregory Hartman, along with a text. Christmas came early this year. My phone rang about 10 minutes later. Gregory's voice was practically vibrating with suppressed laughter. Adrian, please tell me this is real and not some elaborate Photoshop job. Oh, it's real, all right. Clarissa posted it herself about an hour ago. I've got screenshots of the whole thread. This is... Gregory paused, and I could hear him trying to compose himself. This is the kind of evidence that defense attorneys dream about. She's essentially admitting that the restraining order was filed as a strategic move to control your behavior while maintaining financial benefits. That's what I thought, I said, grinning. But wait, there's more. I walked him through the rest of Clarissa's social media rant, including her claims about my vindictive behavior and her detailed description of events that she couldn't possibly know unless Serena had told her, which meant Serena had been discussing legal strategy with friends, potentially undermining any claims about being afraid or traumatized. She's digging her own grave, Gregory said, and I could practically hear him rubbing his hands together with glee. Keep monitoring this. Screenshot everything. And whatever you do, don't respond or engage. Let them keep talking. Wouldn't dream of it, I assured him. I'm just an innocent bystander watching the drama unfold. After I hung up with Gregory, I decided to take a little stroll around the office to see if the drama had made its way into my professional life. Sure enough, my colleague Jonah was practically bouncing off the walls when I walked into the break room. Holy shit, Adrian, he said, looking around to make sure no one else was listening. I saw Serena's friends post about you. That's some serious accusations she's throwing around. Jonah had met Serena a few times at company events, and I could tell he was fishing for gossip while trying to maintain plausible deniability. Classic office behavior. Everyone wants the tea, but nobody wants to admit they're stirring the pot. Yeah, I saw it, I said casually, pouring myself another cup of coffee. Social media, you know? People say all kinds of things online. But the stuff about financial abuse. Jonah pressed, lowering his voice conspiratorially. That's pretty heavy stuff to just make up. I shrugged, going for the world-weary but dignified approach. People going through divorces say a lot of things, Jonah. Emotions run high, accusations fly around. The truth usually comes out in the end. Are you holding up okay? I mean, this has got to be rough, having your personal business aired out like that. I'm doing fine, I said, and for the first time in months, I actually meant it. Better than fine, actually. Sometimes the trash takes itself out, you know? Jonah raised an eyebrow at that, but before he could ask for clarification, Sarah from accounting walked in, and the conversation shifted to safer topics like weekend plans and the company's new health insurance options. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work calls and client meetings, but I could feel the undercurrent of office gossip swirling around me. People were definitely talking, but in that careful way that office workers perfect. Meaningful looks, hushed conversations that stop when you walk by, the occasional text message sent while maintaining eye contact. By 5 o'clock, Clarissa's post had garnered over 1,000 likes and hundreds of comments, most of them expressing outrage on Serena's behalf. But buried in all that supportive noise were a few voices of reason. People who pointed out that the situation seemed more complicated than Clarissa was presenting, people who asked uncomfortable questions about the timeline of events, people who suggested that maybe there were two sides to this story. I made sure to screenshot those comments too. Not because I planned to use them. I had more than enough ammunition already, but because they showed that not everyone was buying the narrative that Team Serena was trying to sell. As I was getting ready to leave the office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I stared at that message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. The restraining order was crystal clear about no contact, and I wasn't about to give Serena or her lawyer any excuse to claim I was harassing her. Instead, I forwarded a screenshot of the text to Gregory with a note. Violation of her own restraining order? His response was immediate. Don't respond. Document everything. Let her hang herself. I drove home that evening with the windows down and the radio up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Somewhere across town, Serena was probably realizing that social media warfare was a double-edged sword, and that having friends who couldn't keep their mouths shut was maybe not the tactical advantage she'd thought it would be. Tomorrow was going to be even more interesting than today. Wednesday morning started like any other day in paradise. Coffee, newspaper, zero financial anxiety about funding someone else's delusional business ventures. I was halfway through an article about tech stocks when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Wells Fargo Business Banking, and I knew exactly who it was before I even picked up. Mr. Blackwell, this is Kevin Collins. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Not at all, Kevin. What can I do for you? There was a pause, the kind of pause that bankers use when they're about to deliver news that's going to ruin someone's day. Fortunately, I had a pretty good feeling it wasn't going to be my day getting ruined. Well, sir, I wanted to give you an update on the Serena's boutique loan situation. As you know, with your guarantee withdrawn, we've been working with Mrs. Blackwell to find alternative arrangements. Of course, I said, settling back in my chair. How's that going? Another pause. Longer this time. Not well, I'm afraid. Mrs. Blackwell has been in twice this week, and I have to tell you, she seems quite distressed about the situation. She's asked if there's any way we can reinstate your guarantee without your direct involvement. I nearly choked on my coffee. She asked you to forge my signature? Oh no, nothing like that, Collins said quickly. She suggested that perhaps there was some sort of automatic renewal clause, or that maybe your original guarantee could be extended based on your marital obligations. This was getting better by the minute. Kevin, you explained to her that loan guarantees don't work that way, right? I did. Multiple times. She seemed to have difficulty accepting that information. I bet she did. Serena had spent so many years operating under the assumption that my money was her money that the concept of actual financial independence was probably giving her hives. So what's the timeline looking like? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Well, without a new guarantor or significant additional collateral, the loan goes into default in. I could hear papers rustling. 25 days. Mrs. Blackwell would need to either pay the full balance, which is currently $37,412, or we'd have to begin repossession proceedings. 37 grand. In 25 days. For a woman whose boutique had never turned a profit and whose personal credit limit wouldn't cover a decent used car. This was going to be like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Except the train was filled with overpriced handbags and delusions of entrepreneurial grandeur. I understand, I said. Thanks for keeping me informed, Kevin. I know this puts you in a difficult position. Actually, Mr. Blackwell, there is one more thing. His voice took on that careful, professional tone that meant he was about to drop another bombshell. We received some unusual documentation yesterday. Paperwork that appeared to have your signature, requesting an extension of your guarantee. My blood went cold. Appeared to have my signature? Yes, sir. Our fraud department flagged it immediately. The signature didn't match our samples, and frankly, it looked like someone had traced it from another document. We've reported it to the police as suspected forgery. Holy shit. Do you know who submitted the paperwork? It was hand-delivered by an older woman who identified herself as Mrs. Blackwell's mother. Lorraine Thompson, I believe. Lorraine. Of course it was Lorraine. Serena's mother. The woman who'd raised financial manipulation to an art form and apparently passed those skills down to her daughter like a fucked-up family heirloom. I'd met Lorraine exactly 3 times in 4 years of marriage, and each encounter had left me feeling like I needed a shower and a security audit. The woman had the moral compass of a Vegas casino and the subtlety of a brick through a window. She'd spent our entire wedding reception making not-so-subtle hints about how I should invest in her MLM essential oils business, and she'd once tried to get me to co-sign a car loan for her boyfriend's nephew's girlfriend's cousin or some equally ridiculous connection. Kevin, I want to be very clear about this. I did not sign any extension paperwork. I did not authorize anyone to sign on my behalf. And I absolutely did not change my mind about withdrawing my guarantee. I understand completely, sir. We've already voided the fraudulent documents, and as I mentioned, the police have been notified. I wanted to call you directly to make sure you were aware of the situation. I appreciate that. Will I need to file a separate police report? That would probably be advisable, yes. The more documentation we have, the stronger the case becomes. After I hung up with Collins, I sat there for a few minutes, just processing the sheer audacity of what had just happened. Serena and her mother had actually attempted to forge my signature to extend a loan guarantee. Not only was this fraud, it was incredibly stupid fraud. Banks don't just accept random paperwork without verification, especially when it involves tens of thousands of dollars. I called Gregory immediately. Let me get this straight, he said after I'd explained the situation. Your wife files a restraining order claiming you're financially abusive. Then her mother tries to forge your signature to keep you financially involved. That's about the size of it. Adrian, this case just went from divorce court drama to potential criminal charges. Forgery, attempted fraud. This is serious federal shit now. The kind of stuff that comes with jail time. I could hear the excitement in his voice. Gregory lived for this kind of legal warfare. He was like a shark who'd just smelled blood in the water, and that blood belonged to people stupid enough to commit crimes while already involved in legal proceedings. What do I need to do? I asked. First, file that police report today. Get everything on record. Second, I'm going to contact the DA's office and make sure they're aware of the connection between the restraining order and the fraud attempt. This shows a pattern of behavior that completely undermines their abuse narrative. Pattern of behavior? Think about it. She files a restraining order claiming you're controlling and abusive, but simultaneously her mother is trying to forge your signature to maintain financial benefits. That's not the behavior of someone who's afraid of their abuser. That's the behavior of someone trying to have their cake and eat it too. After I hung up with Gregory, I drove straight to the police station to file my report. The desk sergeant, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, took my statement with the kind of weary professionalism that suggested she'd seen every variety of human stupidity multiple times. So let me make sure I understand this, she said, reading through my statement. Your wife has a restraining order against you for alleged financial abuse, but her mother tried to forge your signature to keep you financially involved in her business? That's correct. She shook her head. 23 years on the force, and people still find new ways to surprise me. We'll investigate this thoroughly, Mr. Blackwell. Fraud is fraud, regardless of family relationships. On my way home, I stopped by Serena's boutique just to see how things were looking. Not to go inside, obviously. The restraining order made that impossible, but I parked across the street and observed from a safe distance. The place looked rough. The usual bustling energy was gone, replaced by an almost desperate quiet. Through the windows, I could see Serena inside, talking animatedly on the phone while gesturing wildly with her free hand. Even from across the street, her body language screamed panic and frustration. There were only 2 customers in the store, both of them browsing half-heartedly through racks of overpriced clothes that nobody really needed. The sale? Everything must go. Signs in the windows told me everything I needed to know about the boutique's financial situation. As I watched, a woman in a business suit walked out of the store, shaking her head and looking annoyed. Probably another supplier demanding payment, or maybe a landlord discussing late rent. The boutique was hemorrhaging money faster than a punctured artery, and without my financial transfusions, it was only a matter of time before it bled out completely. I pulled out my phone and took a few discreet photos of the storefront, documenting the everything must go signs and the general state of desperation. Not for any malicious purpose, just for my records. If this ended up in court, it might be useful to have visual evidence of how quickly the business had deteriorated without my support. As I was getting ready to leave, I saw Lorraine's beat-up Honda Civic pull into the parking lot. Speak of the devil. Serena's mother got out of the car, looking around nervously like she expected police to jump out of the bushes. Which, given recent events, probably wasn't an unreasonable fear. Lorraine hurried into the boutique, and through the window, I could see her and Serena in what appeared to be an intense conversation. Lots of hand-waving and agitated gestures, probably discussing their next brilliant scheme to solve their financial problems. I started my car and drove away, smiling to myself. 25 days until the loan defaulted. 25 days for them to come up with $37,000 or find another sucker willing to guarantee their failing business. I gave them maybe 10 days before the real panic set in. Maybe 15 if they were particularly delusional about their prospects. Either way, it was going to be one hell of a show. And the best part? I had front row seats and absolutely no responsibility for the outcome. Sometimes life really does work out exactly the way it's supposed to. The thing about watching someone else's life implode is that it's simultaneously fascinating and horrifying. Like rubbernecking at a car accident, except the accident keeps happening in slow motion over several weeks. By Thursday of that week, the show was getting really entertaining. My credit monitoring service, yeah, I pay for that shit because I'm not an idiot, sent me an alert that made me nearly spit out my morning coffee. Serena had just maxed out her personal credit cards. All of them. In the span of 3 days, she'd gone from having decent available credit to being tapped out at just over 15 grand across 4 different cards. Now, you might think that someone facing a $37,000 business loan default would use their available credit to, try to save the business. But you'd be thinking like a rational person, and rational thinking had clearly left the building along with Serena's financial security. Instead, according to the transaction alerts I was still receiving, because apparently when you're married, credit monitoring services don't automatically stop sharing information even when restraining orders are involved. Serena had gone on what could only be described as a therapeutic shopping spree of epic proportions. Nordstrom, $1,847. Louis Vuitton, $2,234. Some boutique in Beverly Hills I'd never heard of, $1,156. Saks Fifth Avenue, $998. And that was just Monday. Tuesday brought visits to Tiffany & Company, Neiman Marcus, and what appeared to be a high-end day spa that charged more for a facial than most people spend on groceries in a month. It was like watching someone try to put out a fire by throwing designer handbags at it. The logic was absolutely breathtaking in its complete absence of logic. I forwarded all the alerts to Gregory, who called me back within the hour, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Adrian," he wheezed, "please tell me you're seeing what I'm seeing. This woman is about to lose her business. Her mother just committed fraud on her behalf, and she's responding by buying jewelry." "That's retail therapy for you," I said. "When life gives you lemons, buy a Louis Vuitton bag to carry them in. This is incredible. We're documenting financial irresponsibility in real time. If she tries to claim she was financially dependent on you or that losing your support caused her hardship, we can show the court that she responded to financial crisis by going on a $15,000 shopping spree. It gets better, I told him. She's maxed out her cards, which means she's now completely dependent on whatever cash the boutique generates. And based on what I saw yesterday, that's not much. Meanwhile, the social media drama was reaching new heights of absurdity. Clarissa had apparently appointed herself as Serena's official PR representative, posting daily updates about her friend's brave struggle against financial abuse. The narrative was getting more elaborate and more divorced from reality with each passing day. Tuesday's post was a real masterpiece. Day 5 of Serena's journey to independence. Despite her toxic ex's attempts to destroy everything she's built, she's staying strong and focusing on self-care. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. Flexed biceps sparkles #self-care #survivor #bosslady. The post was accompanied by photos of Serena at that expensive spa, looking relaxed and pampered while getting what appeared to be a gold leaf facial. The caption underneath read, "Taking time to heal and recharge. You can't pour from an empty cup. Red heart." The irony was so thick you could serve it at a dinner party. Here was a woman supposedly devastated by financial abuse, healing herself through financial excess. It was like watching someone claim they're lactose intolerant while chugging a milkshake. But the comments section was where things got really interesting. The usual chorus of supportive friends was still there, but cracks were starting to show. A few people were asking uncomfortable questions. "Wait, didn't you say yesterday that she was struggling to keep her business open?" asked someone named Michelle. "How is she affording spa treatments if her husband cut off her money?" inquired a woman named Lisa. Clarissa, bless her heart, tried to spin it. "Serena's friends are supporting her through this difficult time. We're making sure she knows her worth." But the damage was done. People were starting to notice that the narrative didn't quite add up. If Serena was truly a victim of financial abuse who had been left destitute by her controlling husband, where was the money for luxury spa days coming from? By Thursday, the boutique situation had gone from critical to terminal. I knew this because my barber, of all people, filled me in on the drama. "You know that fancy women's clothing store on 5th Street?" Tony asked while trimming my hair. "The one with all the expensive stuff?" "Serena's boutique?" I asked innocently. "That's the one. My wife went by there yesterday, and apparently 2 of the employees were cleaning out their lockers, quitting on the spot. The owner couldn't make payroll." I made appropriately sympathetic noises while internally calculating how long a business could survive without employees. The answer, in case you're curious, is not very long at all. "The word around town is that the place is going under," Tony continued, apparently unaware that he was talking to the soon-to-be ex-husband of the owner. "My wife said the woman who owns it was crying in the back office while customers were trying to return merchandise." That afternoon, Martin Rhodes called again. Serena's lawyer sounded even more desperate than he had the previous week, if that was possible. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm calling to discuss a potential settlement offer." "Settlement?" I said, genuinely confused. "Settlement of what?" "I haven't filed any legal action against your client. I'm just complying with her restraining order." "Yes, well," he cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to consider modifications to the current arrangement in exchange for some financial accommodation during this transition period." Translation: Serena was broke and panicking and wanted to negotiate her way out of the hole she dug for herself. "Mr. Rhodes, I thought I made my position clear. The restraining order prohibits me from having any involvement in your client's life, financial or otherwise. Surely you're not suggesting I violate a court order. There are ways to structure financial support that wouldn't require direct contact." "Mr. Rhodes," I interrupted, "let me ask you something. If your client is truly afraid of me, as she claimed in her restraining order petition, why is she asking for financial support from someone she considers dangerous?" Silence on the other end. "And if she's not actually afraid of me, if this restraining order was filed for strategic rather than safety reasons, wouldn't that constitute perjury?" More silence. "I'm going to hang up now," Rhodes said finally. "But I want you to know that my client is prepared to make this very difficult for you if you continue to be unreasonable." "Difficult how?" I asked. "More restraining orders?" More accusations of abuse. More social media campaigns painting me as a monster? Bring it on, counselor. I've got nothing to hide. After he hung up, I called Gregory to report the conversation. They're getting desperate, he said with obvious satisfaction. When lawyers start making vague threats about making things difficult, it means they don't have any actual legal leverage left. How long do you think before they crack completely? Given the timeline on the business loan, I'd say we're looking at maybe 10 days before we see some really interesting developments. Maybe 2 weeks if they manage to find another sucker to exploit. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at my favorite steakhouse, the kind of place where the steaks cost more than some people spend on groceries in a week. While I was enjoying a perfectly cooked ribeye and a glass of excellent wine, I couldn't help but reflect on how dramatically my life had improved in less than 2 weeks. No more anxiety about surprise bills. No more wondering where my money was going each month. No more walking on eggshells around someone who treated my bank account like her personal ATM while simultaneously resenting me for having money in the first place. For the first time in years, I was eating dinner without my phone buzzing with urgent requests for money transfers or panicked messages about business emergencies. The silence was absolutely golden. As I was finishing my meal, my phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. "This is Lorraine. We need to talk. Serena is in serious trouble, and this has gone too far." I screenshotted the message, deleted it, and ordered dessert. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them realize what it actually costs to maintain the lifestyle they've been taking for granted. I had 21 days left until the loan defaulted, and I was going to enjoy every single one of them. Monday morning brought the kind of news that makes you believe in karma, justice, and the fundamental fairness of the universe. I was sitting in my office, reviewing contracts and pretending to care about quarterly projections, when my phone rang. Detective Martinez from the Fraud Division. "Mr. Blackwell, we've made an arrest in your case." I set down my coffee and gave the conversation my full attention. "Lorraine Thompson?" "That's correct, sir. We picked her up this morning at her residence." The evidence was pretty overwhelming. Not only did we have the forged loan documents from the bank, but we found additional fraudulent paperwork in her possession. Additional paperwork? It appears Mrs. Thompson attempted to access your insurance policies as well. She had forged authorization forms requesting policy details and beneficiary information. Your insurance company flagged it and contacted us directly. I had to hand it to Lorraine. When the woman decided to commit fraud, she really went all in. It wasn't enough to forge my signature on loan documents. She had to try to get her grubby little hands on my life insurance too. The sheer ambition of it was almost admirable in a completely fucked up way. Any idea how she got copies of my signature to trace? Based on what we found in her house, it looks like she was using documents from your wedding, marriage certificate, gift registry paperwork, that sort of thing. She had quite a collection of your signatures to work from. Of course she did. I remembered now. Lorraine had insisted on helping with the wedding paperwork, claiming she wanted to take some of the stress off Serena. At the time, I thought it was sweet that she wanted to be involved. Now I realized she'd been conducting reconnaissance for future fraud operations. What happens next, detective? She's been charged with multiple counts of forgery, attempted fraud, and identity theft. With the evidence we have, this is looking at serious jail time. Her arraignment is scheduled for Thursday. After I hung up, I immediately called Gregory to share the good news. His reaction was everything I could have hoped for. "Adrian, this is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Do you understand what this means for the restraining order case? Enlighten me. Your wife claimed you were financially abusive, but her own mother was simultaneously committing financial crimes using your identity. No judge is going to look at that pattern and think you're the villain here. This shows a family-wide culture of financial manipulation and deception. But the best was yet to come. Around noon, Gregory called back, practically giggling with excitement. "You need to see this," he said. "Check your email. I'm sending you some text message screenshots that the police recovered from Lorraine's phone." I opened the attachment, and there it was, a complete record of conversations between Lorraine and Serena dating back 3 weeks. The messages were like a masterclass in fraud planning and mother-daughter criminal conspiracy. The conversation started innocently enough, with Lorraine asking about the money situation and Serena explaining that I'd pulled all support out of spite. But then things got interesting. "Can't you just sign his name to extend the loan?" Lorraine had texted. His signature is pretty simple. I've seen it on the wedding stuff. Mom, that's illegal, Serena had replied. Only if they catch you. Banks don't check that stuff carefully. I know a guy who did it for his ex-wife's mortgage. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Family helps family, honey. The next series of messages were even more damning. Lorraine had sent photos of my signature from various documents, asking Serena to confirm which version looked most natural. They discussed the best time to deliver the forged paperwork when the regular manager isn't there, and what story to tell if anyone asked questions. Urgent family emergency. Husband is traveling. But the real gem was a message from just 4 days ago. Don't worry about the insurance thing. I found copies of his policy numbers in your wedding folder. If we can't get the loan extended, maybe there are other options. Men his age have heart attacks all the time. I stared at that message for a solid minute, reading it over and over again. Lorraine hadn't just been planning financial fraud. She'd apparently been researching my life insurance policies with some very specific intentions in mind. Gregory was still on the phone, waiting for my reaction. Did you see the insurance message? He asked. Yeah, I saw it. Jesus Christ, Gregory, she was talking about killing me. It's probably not actionable as a direct threat. Too vague, too much plausible deniability. But it definitely shows premeditation and a pattern of escalating criminal behavior. The police had apparently shown these messages to Serena during her mother's arrest, because by 2 o'clock that afternoon, Martin Rhodes had withdrawn as her counsel. I found this out when Gregory called, barely able to contain his laughter. Rhodes is off the case, he announced. Filed a motion to withdraw this morning, citing irreconcilable differences with client regarding legal strategy. Translation? He doesn't want to be associated with someone whose family is committing felonies in support of her legal case. Smart move, actually. This kind of thing can destroy a lawyer's reputation. So who's representing her now? Some bottom feeder named Travis Kellerman. Ambulance chaser, specializes in personal injury and messy divorces. The kind of lawyer you hire when the good lawyers won't return your calls. Travis Kellerman. I'd heard the name before, usually in connection with late-night TV commercials promising to get you the money you deserve and billboards featuring his face next to slogans like, "Don't settle for less." The guy had the kind of reputation that made actual lawyers cringe. Sure enough, by Thursday afternoon, I'd received a letter from Travis Kellerman's office. The letterhead was garish, bright red text on yellow paper, like a used car lot advertisement. The language was pure ambulance chaser melodrama. Mr. Blackwell, the letter began, my client, Mrs. Serena Blackwell, finds herself in dire circumstances due to your vindictive and calculated withdrawal of financial support. Despite the tragic situation involving her mother, Mrs. Blackwell remains committed to resolving this matter amicably. The letter went on to demand emergency spousal support of $5,000 per month, plus immediate reinstatement of my loan guarantee, plus coverage of Serena's legal fees. In exchange, they were generously offering to consider modifications to the restraining order. I forwarded the letter to Gregory, who called me back within an hour, still chuckling. This guy is a piece of work, he said. Emergency spousal support while there's an active restraining order? That's like asking someone to pay alimony to their stalker. What's our response? Oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to write a response that basically says, our client cannot provide financial support to someone who has claimed in court documents that such support constitutes abuse. To do so would be to admit guilt to the charges of financial abuse, and would potentially violate the restraining order by inserting our client back into Mrs. Blackwell's financial life against her expressed wishes. In other words, we're using the restraining order against them. Exactly. They created this legal framework. Now they get to live with it. The response letter was a thing of beauty. Gregory had a gift for legal writing that managed to be both professionally respectful and completely savage at the same time. He pointed out that providing financial support to someone who had claimed such support was abusive would be contrary to the spirit of the restraining order and potentially harmful to Mrs. Blackwell's stated goal of achieving independence from allegedly controlling financial arrangements. He also noted that the request for spousal support came at the same time that Mrs. Blackwell's mother was facing criminal charges for attempting to fraudulently access my financial accounts, creating obvious concerns about the family's approach to financial matters. The letter concluded with an offer to discuss spousal support through proper legal channels once the restraining order was withdrawn, and Mrs. Blackwell had demonstrated a commitment to lawful and honest financial practices. It was the legal equivalent of a polite middle finger, and I loved every word of it. By Friday, the local gossip network was working overtime. My barber, Tony, was practically vibrating with excitement when I came in for my weekly trim. "Did you hear about that boutique owner's mother?" he asked before I'd even sat down. "Got arrested for fraud. Apparently, she was forging signatures left and right, trying to steal money from banks and insurance companies." "No kidding," I said, settling into the chair. "My wife says the whole family's bad news. The daughter's got that fancy store, but word is she's about to lose it because she can't pay her bills. And now the mother's going to jail for trying to steal money. What kind of people do that? Desperate people, I guess. Desperate, hell. That's criminal people. You don't just accidentally forge someone's signature multiple times." As Tony worked on my hair, he continued his running commentary on the fall of the Thompson-Blackwell criminal enterprise. Apparently, Serena's boutique had lost another employee. The assistant manager had quit without notice, leaving just Serena and one part-time worker to run the whole operation. "My wife went by there yesterday," Tony continued. "Place looked like a ghost town. No customers, half the racks empty, and the owner looked like she hadn't slept in a week. It was all coming together exactly as I'd predicted. The loan default was now just 18 days away. Serena had no employees and no money. Her mother was facing serious jail time, and her new lawyer was the kind of guy who advertised on bus benches. Sometimes the universe really does have a sense of humor, and sometimes the best revenge really is just stepping back and letting people destroy themselves." I tipped Tony generously and drove home, humming along to the radio and feeling better about life than I had in years. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon from a number I didn't recognize but somehow felt familiar. When I picked up, the voice on the other end was calm, weathered, and carried the weight of hard-earned experience. "Adrian, this is Edward Thompson, Serena's father." I nearly dropped my phone. In 4 years of marriage, I'd met Edward exactly twice. Brief, awkward encounters at family gatherings where he'd seemed more interested in avoiding his ex-wife and daughter than engaging in conversation. Serena rarely talked about him, and when she did, it was usually with a mixture of resentment and dismissal. "Edward," I said carefully, "this is unexpected. I imagine it is." His voice was steady, resigned. "I heard about what's been happening. The restraining order, Lorraine's arrest, the business troubles. I wanted you to know that not everyone in this family has lost their damn minds." There was something in his tone that made me sit up straighter. This wasn't a man calling to plead his daughter's case or negotiate on her behalf. This was someone who understood exactly what was happening and why. "Adrian, I went through this exact same shit with Lorraine 23 years ago. The false accusations, the forged documents, the restraining orders filed to gain leverage while keeping the money flowing. Hell, she even tried to have me committed once when I threatened to cut off her credit cards." The pieces started falling into place. Edward's absence from family events, his obvious discomfort around his ex-wife and daughter, the way he'd always seemed like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Serena learned all this from her mother," he continued. "The manipulation, the victim act, the financial schemes, it's generational. Lorraine did it to me, and now Serena's doing it to you. Why are you telling me this? Because you're doing exactly the right thing by not caving. They'll escalate, they'll make threats, they'll find new victims to exploit, but eventually they'll move on to easier targets. Don't be their ATM, son." I made that mistake for 15 years. When he hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected, validation from someone who actually understood. Day 26. For days before the loan defaulted. That's when Serena finally snapped and did the one thing that guaranteed her complete and total legal destruction. I was in my office around 2 in the afternoon when Melissa's panicked voice came through the intercom. "Adrian, your wife is here. She's screaming in the lobby." By the time I got downstairs, Serena was in full meltdown mode. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was running, and she was gesticulating wildly while yelling at anyone within earshot. The few clients in the waiting area were staring in horrified fascination, like they were watching a nature documentary about rabid animals. "This is all your fault," she screamed when she saw me. "You're destroying everything I worked for. You're ruining my life out of spite. Ma'am, I said calmly. There's a restraining order. Fuck the restraining order. I need you to fix this. The bank is taking everything tomorrow. My employees are gone. I'm losing the store. Security arrived within minutes. I called them the second I saw her car in the parking lot. As they escorted her out, she kept screaming about how I was a monster, how I'd manipulated the system, how she'd make me pay for destroying her dreams. The police arrested her 20 minutes later for violating her own restraining order. The next day, Lorraine tried staging a press conference outside the courthouse, ranting about financial abuse and systemic injustice. A reporter cut her short. Ma'am, weren't you arrested for forging your son-in-law's signature? The clip went viral as an example of PR disasters. Meanwhile, the boutique officially closed its doors. Inventory seized, assets frozen, reputation destroyed. All without me lifting a finger. The irony was perfect. Serena had filed a restraining order to control my behavior, then violated it herself when that control didn't work. She'd handed me the ultimate victory by destroying her own credibility in the most public way possible. Sometimes justice really does serve itself. 6 months later, the dust had settled into a pattern that would have been hilarious if it weren't so predictable. Serena and Lorraine were living together in a cramped apartment across town, both broke and thoroughly disgraced. Lorraine had gotten 18 months for the fraud charges, though she was currently out on bail pending appeal. Serena's boutique was a distant memory, replaced by a smoothie shop that actually turned a profit. The restraining order still had 9 months left on it, and I'd never been happier about a legal document in my life. It was like having a force field against financial manipulation. Every time Travis Kellerman sent another desperate letter demanding support, Gregory would respond with polite reminders about the court's protection order and my obligation not to interfere with Serena's independence. Their latest offer had been particularly pathetic: 6 months of financial support in exchange for withdrawing the abuse allegations. Gregory had actually laughed out loud when he read it to me over the phone. They want you to pay them to admit they lied about you being abusive, he'd said. The audacity is almost impressive. As for me, that $4,000 a month I used to hemorrhage on Serena's lifestyle had been redirected into investments, retirement savings, and small personal luxuries that actually brought me joy. I'd taken up cooking classes, bought a ridiculous espresso machine that made coffee better than most cafes, and started weekend hiking trips that cleared my head and reminded me what peace felt like. The restraining order meant to chain me had become the key to my freedom. Serena thought she was cornering me with legal threats, but she'd handed me the cleanest break imaginable. No fights, no guilt, no messy negotiations, just instant liberation wrapped in official court documents. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. And sometimes, the best revenge is just letting people destroy themselves while you build something better.